Hi BookTube, my name is Juan. I am just one reader, and today we are continuing on with our discussion of The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. So, we are now going to discuss chapters 6, 7, and 8. So this roughly corresponds to pages 290 all the way to 428. So what happens in these chapters? Basically, we follow Theo as he is still in Las Vegas with Boris. We follow their relationship. But some things start getting in the way of their relationship. So it's like the previous section that we read last week was about Theo and Boris having this sort of idealistic, in a weird, corrupted kind of way, friendship of taking drugs and committing crime and shoplifting and being awful and drinking and just having that kind of life. And yet it feels like a very romantic passage in the book, and I feel like that's because they have a very romantic relationship. And I don't just mean that in a sexualized kind of way, but I mean it in the true essence of the word romantic. Like it's something idealized, something nostalgic almost. So in this opening part of chapter 6, we start getting some things that are getting in the way of their relationship. So Boris gets a girlfriend, Kotku, and then we have a strange man who is knocking on the door of Theo's house looking for his dad, and clearly there's something really shady going on. Eventually what happens is that Theo's father dies in a car accident, which I never knew how to interpret. I never knew if I should interpret that as just a product of chance, of fate, an incident, an accident, like a real accident, bad luck, a suicide maybe, or I don't know. I feel like that is one of the great things that Donna Tartt does in this book is she shows us, or she presents us with certain events, and it's up to us, the readers, to really interpret what to make of that. So I feel like Theo's dad's death is left to the reader to think about, and I really don't know. And I don't think there's an answer to this question. I just feel like the fact that we have this happen the way that it happens is precisely because the reader can start thinking about the possibilities. Like, Theo's dad certainly was the kind of man who would have committed suicide in this time of need and danger. But then again, chance, fate, destiny, if you will, that is another theme in the book. How fate or destiny or the universe, or call it chance or whatever, gets in the way of people's lives. Of course, that is central to the book, considering what happened to Theo prior to this incident with his mother dying so tragically out of nowhere and completely out of chance or luck. But anyway, so that's what happens, and after that comes one of the most intense passages, in my opinion, of the entire novel, which is when Theo desperately and impulsively, irrationally almost, has to flee Las Vegas and he goes to New York. That passage of the book to me was very reminiscent of the Secret History passage when the protagonist is experiencing the winter, which is very, very cold, and he has a fever, and you feel his anguish, you feel his pain, you feel everything that the character is feeling. This was as intense as that. reading this passage, you know, when Theo is going on the bus and trying to hide the dog in the bag, in the shopping bag. It was so intense, and it made me queasy. It was so intense. And this is something that Donna Tartt is exceedingly wonderful at. Then the next chapter of the book, I think, is when Theo comes back to New York and starts rebuilding or rekindling his relationship with Hobie and starts working there in the shop. I love the way that it's described as a shop behind the shop, or beneath it, behind the shop behind the shop, and he starts learning this wonderful craft from Hobie, which is a very symbolic thing of learning how to become a person, learning how to become your own self. And then that's pretty much what happens in this chapter, but I think it's really interesting because we start seeing a Theo that is a very different character to the Theo that we saw in the opening of the book. In the opening of the book, Theo was a pure, innocent sort of boy who got in trouble. There were some shenanigans that he got in, some trouble that he got into walking into people's homes with his friend and getting in trouble and being called by the principal and stuff like that. But he was overall a boy. But now in this portion of the book, we are seeing a Theo that is corrupted, I believe. Corrupted by many things, by drugs, by alcohol, by the system, by tragedy, by laws, by the negligent care or lack thereof of adults around him. And I think this is, again, one of those instances in which Donna Tartt is recalling the same kind of question. Why is Theo the way that he is? Why is he going down the path that he is going? Why is he choosing to become the person that he is? Is there a choice in this? Or, I mean, are we as people, as humans, as a growing adults, are we able to choose, or are we just thrown into the hands of the fates, as it were? I think this is a very interesting, like, big question that Donna Tartt is throwing out there in this book, not just in this section, but in the book overall. How much are we the product of our parents and our histories and our parents' histories? How much are we the product of our choices? How much are our choices influenced by external factors that are not at all up to us? Like, how random is our experience, and how much can we do with it? But well, that's all I want to say for today. But I want to end this video by reading the final paragraph from this last chapter, because I feel like it's a very interesting point in which it's like a transformative point. It's when Theo is walking down the street and he sees that the building where he used to live with his mother is now being demolished. That, of course, is a huge symbol, a metaphor. It's a metaphor of not just his mother, but everything that era of his life represented. So it's like he's watching his previous self crumble to the ground. And Donna Tartt says that pretty explicitly. So this is what he said, what Donna Tartt says about this as Theo. And the farther I walked away, the more upset I got at the loss of one of the few stable and unchanging docking points in the world that I had taken for granted. Familiar faces, glad greetings, hey manito, For I had that, I mean, that is wonderful how Donna Tartt is sort of slipping little pieces of language in there that really are incredibly evocative of an emotion, of a character. I love it. Anyway, familiar faces, glad greetings. Hey, manito. For I thought that this last touchstone of the past at least would be here where I left it. It was weird to think I'd never be able to thank Jose and Goldie for the money they'd given me, or even weirder, that I'd never be able to tell them my father had died, because who else did I know who had known him, or would care? Even the sidewalk felt like it might break under my feet, and I might drop through 57th Street into some pit where I never stopped falling. So I feel like this is a very clear point, like a changing point in the novel in terms of the corruption of Theo's character. I do think that The Goldfinch is a novel about corruption of the soul or of morality, or call it whatever, of the human psyche. But it is about corruption. It's about redemption as well. And I think this ending of this chapter is very, very much a kind of changing point, because like cornerstone in Theo's journey into another path, which, as you probably can guess, it's not going to be a very good path for him. Of course it's not. But anyway, those are my thoughts so far on The Goldfinch. I also have to say, there is there's a line of dialogue in this section of the book when Boris is trying to convince Theo to not go to Las Vegas so quickly. So Theo wants to run away immediately to Las Vegas after his father has died, and Boris is trying to convince him to stay for a while longer, but Theo is not listening. And there's a line of dialogue there, something that Boris tells him that doesn't make sense. And it's sort of, it's like something is breaking the dialogue there. Something doesn't make sense. And when I read it, I was like scratching my head, going like, huh? I didn't get this. And then later on in the novel, like a long way after that, we come back to this scene and it's like, oh my fucking God. So Donna Tartt, thank you, because you played me. You played me really well. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on this section of The Goldfinch. Remember, no spoilers, only chapters 6, 7, and 8. Be free to discuss everything that happens in these chapters. And let's start the discussion. Thanks for listening.